Hello, and welcome to the Psych and Business Podcast, where we highlight the integration of psychology and psychological principles into the world of business and organizations. I'm your host, Dr. Ernest Wayde. All right, so I'm really very excited about our guest today. Another great guest for you. Her name is Dr. Lauren Catenacci. And Lauren, I hope I said that right. Lauren leads her own coaching and consulting practice where she partners with organizations to build leadership capability and cultivate thriving cultures. Lauren has held some pretty cool roles as well and done some interesting work, including as a director of leadership and organizational effectiveness at Gartner. Nice, Lauren. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad we were able to make this work, Lauren. I know you're really busy, so I really appreciate your time. I always want to start by asking people to share your story. Tell us about how you got where you are and how you got into this role and this work that we're doing today.
Yeah, I think that I've always kind of been curious about complexity and how that plays out in social situations. So I was born in Canada, but raised in the US, and like that already kind of opened me up to like this, how things could be different in different scenarios and how people act in different
Mm-hmm.
situations. Um, and early on, I was really interested in social psychology, so how groups make
Yeah.
decisions. And I thought that there was something there, but I wasn't really sure how to make money off of it if I was being direct. But ultimately, what I would learn is, there's this field of IO psychology, and that's a great way to apply a lot of the theory and practices in social psychology
Mm-hmm.
into the workplace. So, kind of feeding my need to, like, pay some bills, but also what kind of keeps me curious and keeps me wondering, and yeah, fills my cup.
Awesome. I really appreciate that background, especially firstly your cultural diversity, having been born in one country and lived in another country. I think that's awesome. I want to talk a little bit about the work that you do because one of the things that I was really excited to hear about was the unique industries that you work in. And so I know that you do coaching and consulting, and one of the industries that I was like really interested in hearing about was veterinary medicine. I don't think I've met anybody that works in that field. So tell us about that industry. Tell us about what it's like to coach it and work with leaders and people in that industry.
Yeah. So I guess what I'd also say too is just a little bit of like why I'm even interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've always been very passionate about animals, and I did kind of wonder at some point if veterinary medicine could be a passion for me, or like a career path, really. And I even actually I don't think I've said this very publicly, but early in my PhD, I really did actually consider like, is it too late to transfer to veterinary medicine? Um, but ultimately, I thought it would be better to stay the course. But really think about, okay, you're right. This is actually, we don't hear a lot about people in organizational psychology or
Mm-hmm.
business psychology helping this field,
Yeah.
and yet why am I so interested in it? Um, so the wheels were kind of churning a little bit early in my PhD about like what the application could be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say that so I kind of got in working with the space, doing an interim HR, like head of people and culture at a startup,
So you were
in
you were an
veterinary.
HR director at a startup.
Yeah, I was the head of people and culture,
Okay.
and really the pull there was about cultivating cultures from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's the burnout culture that everyone talks about. Veterinary medicine is challenging. So you wanted to know what it's like working with this group.
Yeah.
It's like, because no one has really worked in that field um, from our field,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's such a challenge in communicating what we do, which is already a problem for us. You know this, I know this,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so they often think that like you have to do a lot to kind of sell
Mm-hmm.
the work of veterinary medicine
Mm-hmm.
while not having a lot of context into how things get done, and then no one's really going to give you that access.
Yeah.
um,
So very hard to try to
So
convince and demonstrate the value of focusing on behavior and applying principles of psychology when you're not really have a good sense of the veterinary field itself. Am I getting that right?
yeah, and I want to pin this, like, I definitely want to come back to it because it's connected to why I'm working with the types of organizations I work with. But,
Hmm.
like, one of the things that's so fascinating to me about this field of psychology and having a PhD is being able to blend art and science.
Mm.
So, like, and I'm not even actually really artistic. What I like is, look, there's the science, there's the things that we learn about in the textbooks, and then it's like, how does it actually play out,
Yeah.
right? And we know that there's going to be a difference. I think, like, that's kind of what's so exciting to me about veterinary medicine and the other organizations that I seek to work with, because I want to figure out, like, the creative way to apply our theories and our models, knowing that they're not going to work because this isn't a big financial services company with endless resources. This industry, veterinary medicine, is riddled with burnout, and there are a lot of challenges too in how, like, roles are segmented and overlapping of roles, a lot of team dynamics
Hmm.
that go under the table that I think could really change um, a lot of how work is done and what the culture is like in veterinary medicine. So I guess this is all to say is it's a slow burn. I am making some very, very small headway, and I think that's it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a startup. I'm here for the long term. So, like, I'm okay if it's like takes little clients to kind of build our knowledge around the application of organizational psychology to veterinary medicine. I
Hmm.
have a great partner right now. She's actually an IO psychologist, and she also is a vet tech.
Oh.
And so this has been the, like, great partnership that I've been looking for because she can really provide the context
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
I've been lacking. And then I have more of the research background. So really thinking about how we're going to bring what we know from the science to the actual clinic.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some really good things on the horizon.
I want to pull on that string a little bit more because you said something really interesting. The blending of the art and the science. Talk to us a little bit about how you do that in your work. You talked about applying that research, the principles, the models that exist, and applying it in a real world setting and customizing it and adjusting it so that it applies and actually is helpful. Talk to us about a little bit about how you do that and how you've seen that be beneficial.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think I was always like this. I think I always kind of wanted to be a purist.
Hmm.
Like, this is what the book says, so this is what we're going to do.
Hmm.
And very soon I realized that that just wasn't really effective. Even if I had heard it, it's not the same until you, like, see it in practice.
Yeah.
You see, like, wait a minute, that didn't actually work. But why didn't it work? Like, what about the context made it not work? Um, and so I think that's one of the pieces. The other pieces to the art is meeting your client where they're at.
Yeah.
So I think this is a lot easier said than done, but really understanding and appreciating that, like, our clients, even if they're asking for something, like, we want to change the culture, they might not be ready for that.
Yeah.
So what is it that they're ready for? Like, one example right now, I'm working with a clinic, and they want to improve the quality of hires that are coming into the clinic, particularly at the vet assistant, vet tech,
Hmm.
and reception level. And if we're familiar with IO psychology, we know that, like, you want to start with a job analysis, right? You want to know what these people do. How is it differentiated? I kind of teed up already that there's some issues with roles in veterinary medicine. And I could do a whole podcast on that would not be that exciting. So I'll skip over that. Just take my word for it. There's some challenges with role differentiation. But we do a job analysis. But here's the thing: nobody in veterinary medicine is going to want to do a job analysis. Like, there's too many things going on,
Hmm.
and, like, how are we going to get this information? So really, this is where I step back and I'm like, what are the core things that a job analysis is trying to accomplish? And what can we do? How can we make a product that is similar to like what we would want to output from a job analysis. So for example, like a competency model, an interview script
Hmm.
with like interview or competency based interview questions. How can we do that? How can we achieve that without the rigor of a job analysis that maybe a Chase Bank,
Yeah.
for example, could afford? But that's not going to be the case here because and again, it's always been so hard having a PhD and seeing everything so pure in terms of like it has to be done precisely or it's not, going to have the same impact. You
Hmm.
have to kind of realize that any integrity, any research or scientific integrity that you can bring to these processes will actually move the needle.
Yeah.
So like, and I think building the relationship for change is more important sometimes, and giving them a product that is sound.
Hmm.
It might not be how you read about it, but is something that actually is going to help move the needle a little bit.
Yeah, I love what you said about meeting them where they're at. I know that in my own practice, it took me a while before I appreciated that concept of really meeting people where they're at. You go in and you have these, you know how it's supposed to be, and you try to help them get there immediately, but very often you have to go through the steps, right? You have to take them through the steps. It's kind of like training for any event. You can't just bam, show up and do the event. You need to train and you need to build up the muscles. And it's the same thing when it comes to working with organizations. You have to demonstrate the value of what you're doing. You have to demonstrate it in terms of actually getting them to achieve some success before you can even get them to aim for the bigger picture. So I really appreciate what you're saying in terms of meeting them where they're at. I want to talk a little bit about what you talked about. But the uniqueness of working with small organizations, because I know that's a passion of yours, working with small organizations. Why is that important to you? Why is that important to you work with small businesses?
Yeah, so it's I would say it's small businesses, it's
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, it's solopreneurs, as we know that's like a new term that people are using that is differentiated to be fair.
Yeah.
Um, so again, I think it's this what is exciting to me is I love organizational psychology in places that it hasn't been realized.
Hmm.
Like if that were my if I had a mission statement, that would be it.
What do you mean it
I
hasn't
want to
been
bring
realized? Help us understand what you mean
yeah.
by that.
So, well, it's funny. I had this idea. Please don't steal it.
As all the all of our
'Cause
as
I
all of our
haven't made it
listeners are
come to
listening in, yeah, nobody steal this idea.
um, so I had this idea about like a blog or something called OD, organization development in unconventional places,
Hmm.
because that is what's exciting to me, right? How do we take these principles and apply them to places and situations that we're not familiar with? And really, the goal would be to feed that what we learn back to the research so we
Hmm.
can kind of complete the cycle of research and
Yeah.
practice. Um, but like there's a lot of challenges to it. Like these are people again who don't really understand the value of psychology in the workplace, or they can kind of see it but like they don't really know how it works or applies to their unique practice. So like that's actually now the art piece that I've talked about with you previous is like what's the art in creating products
Hmm.
that will resonate with this group, and it might not look the same. Like so I might use principles of a job analysis, but I'm not going to go ahead and market a job analysis or even a competency model.
Yeah.
It might be more ad hoc, consulting that is based on figuring out the right skills
Hmm.
for a particular job, which by the way is one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of interest in. It's these small businesses, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs really want to know, how to hire the right people. Like, what do I look for?
Hmm.
And it could be such, that's a whole coaching engagement,
Yeah.
that question. I'm sure, as you know, right? Like, well, it matters. Who are you? What kind of culture are you trying to create?
Yeah.
What's the context? So, like, I wish I could just say, you need somebody who's detail oriented, project management, but like, we know it's going to be different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's dependent. So, really, it's about bringing organizational psychology, organization development to places that haven't realized it, because my experience is those people can really use it. It If you think about the value of small businesses in the US,
Hmm.
like to be able to like contribute in that way to like move a business forward, like that's amazing.
How do you make
So
that case? Because I think one of the things that sometimes people struggle with is making that case. As someone who has that expertise, how do you make that case to small businesses and say, "Hey, I can help you by, doing X, Y, and Z. I can help your people X, Y, and Z. What's your pitch that you use?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still figuring it out. What I'll tell you what I am doing right now. So I have joined this referral group. It's called Team.
Hmm.
So I guess it's a little bit of shout out to the Team Referral Network. And basically, it's a group of small business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs.
Hmm.
And we meet every week to kind of discuss elements in our business. We do a little commercial about either something that's going on in our industry or something we need to ask for from our kind of colleagues. And this is a long-winded, but I think important point to make about, I think the best way to make the case is to kind of show what we do. So we have this opportunity in these meetings to do 10 to 20-minute presentations,
Hmm.
and I use that to be able to show the team this is a case study of something I've done,
Yeah.
and this is what it looks like. We just recently did one on groups and teams where I kind of, as I tried to take it and make it as least like little academia as possible, which was a challenge, and then just kind of turned it into a practical conversation about, these are things that happen in groups and teams. This
Hmm.
is what a group looks like, what a team looks like, and some of the pitfalls, and give that to them as like kind of a free offering, right?
Yeah.
Like, and a way to really understand, like, okay, so now I can kind of see how this psychology or this like coaching and consulting that Lauren Catenacci does
Hmm.
is could be applicable to my business. So I think part of it is like trying some things out, and creating content or products that do more to educate
Hmm.
as like the entry point.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I love what you're talking about with having that resource, that community that you can go to and try to present using the case studies that demonstrates the work that you can do. I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day, and they're talking about how you know this kind of work demonstrating value is a lot to do with branding. We've got to do a better job of continuing to demonstrate the value that we have, and the branding, the work that we do, and how it helps the organization be successful. I think if you can speak to an HR leader or speak to an executive and demonstrate how working with you is going to help them improve their performance or help their team be better. I think that's this value in that, right? It's easier to make that leap there.
I agree with you 100%. This is one of those things where, like, in theory, conceptually, like,
Hmm.
yes, 100%. But then, like, when you get to the nuts and bolts of it, like, there's confidentiality, there's also the unrealized benefits. So when you're coaching someone, for example, I've had people come back way further, like, in the future
Yeah.
and say, what you said here really resonated with me. And it's
Hmm.
like, well, that would have been great a year ago when I was working on my website and my testimonials. Like, um, but you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the part that I think is challenging for me as somebody who is trained as a psychologist and in research methods is
Hmm.
like, how do we quantify our value,
Yeah.
or what's the best we can do to quantify it? So I'm also working on a little bit of a coaching approach slash product that, even if we can't, go out and get all of these like gold standard metrics, at least we're tracking something at the beginning of the engagement and checking in and tracking it,
Yeah.
because I think there is a challenge, particularly with coaching, of it just going on to be like a conversation.
Yeah.
But like for me, I really want it to be data driven or evidence based around something. Like it could be, someone's perception of your ability to lead a conversation. It doesn't matter if we just say, you're a 4 at the beginning and now
Yeah.
you're a 10. Like
And the best
the
coaches
work.
that I've worked with, and my approach is always to have very specific and concrete goals in coaching, right? So it's usually, it's not just coaching, it's not therapy, right? We're not just sitting here talking, right? It's very oriented around specific concrete goals. I want to be better at X measured by Y, and so like we're having very concrete goals so that you can see progress towards that goal and an achievement or not of that goal, right? I think is also
Yeah.
really important, and that's one of the things that I think as psychologists we can also continue to make the case for what our measures, standards of measurement are, right? How do we measure success? What does success look like for our clients? What does success look like for us? so that we can continue to make the case for the work that we do. Lauren, this has been so much fun talking to you. I really appreciate hearing your perspective and hearing about the different industries that you work in. I fully support your desire and your work to bring the work that we do, the value of psychology and psychological principles to those rare industries, those really interesting industries. And I look forward to reading your blog about it, to hearing more on your blog. So I encourage you to do that. No one steal that idea. That's Lauren's idea. She came up with it first. So Lauren, how do people get a hold of you if they want to take advantage of your services or things like that?
Yeah, they could reach out to me on LinkedIn. So just my name, Lauren Catenacci. I also have a website, and that's laurencatenacci.com as well. And so either one of those are great to reach out, and I hope people will, because I'd love to talk about this and I love to collaborate. I think one thing just worth mentioning is, doing this work of being an entrepreneur, solopreneur, however we want to call it. We own our own practice. We do things alone, but it doesn't need to be that way, right? Like we can create community that kind of mimics what it would be like if we worked in an organization, and really kind of leverage one another to like really drive impact
Yeah.
in business. Because to your point, we talked about how hard it is to demonstrate value or how hard it is to communicate it. I think even talking to people is really helpful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Lauren, I always want to take advantage of the great experts we have on the show and ask, what is a tip that you can share with organizations, businesses, leaders, especially in this time that we're all in right now in terms of this environment?
Oh, just like generally. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say like, like I thought you were going to ground it in something. Okay,
No,
just
it's
a
your
general.
whatever kind of tip you want to share.
I mean, I think one of the things is, don't be afraid to like reach out to someone who does either coaching or consulting in this space,
Mm,
or think maybe that it's like not for you, or that you could potentially just Google it and figure out how to create a great culture. Um, I think there's a lot of partnership and opportunity, and um, yeah, I would say that like don't sleep on
mhm.
organizational psychology is the first thing, and then like reach out, because don't try and do it by yourself.
Yeah,
It's Organizations are complicated systems, and you move one thing and it has all this other impact.
yeah.
So you can really see a lot of value if you're leveraging organizational psychology, but yeah, partner with the right person.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I had someone, I think it was either a guest or a colleague, said to me, that if you are in an organization, or you're a leader or a manager or whatever, and you are not taking advantage of coaches and consultants, they are a resource for you, and so you are not taking full advantage of the resources of these people who have expertise in this area, in organizations and human behavior, all of these things that would be of benefit to anybody in every organization. So I completely agree with your tip there. Lauren, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate your taking the time to come and chat with us.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, and yeah, thank
Awesome.
you for having me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. To our audience, thanks for listening, and I hope that you will join us again next time.